of the primary goals of government is not only to achieve economic growth, but also to achieve fiscal management, which obviously calls for prudent fiscal management. Now, one of the key institutions that plays a crucial role in ensuring that fiscal stability is achieved within the economy is the Financial Intelligence Center. And today I'm privileged to be hosting Mr. Clement Kapalu, who is the Director General at FIC. And of course, we will be discussing the role that FIC plays within the Zambian economy. It's great to have you, Mr. Kapalu.
Thanks for having me.
Okay. One of the things that obviously, I had the privilege one time, Mr. Kapalu, to visit the FIC, and the moment we reached the gate, just the level of security that is there, it reminded me of somebody who once cracked a joke and said, the FIC is somewhat like the CIA version of, but before we get into exactly what the FIC is all about, first of all, just let us in on what or who is Clement Kapalu beyond, the security that is at FIC.
Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the work of the Financial Intelligence Center. Clement Kapalu is a Zambian that's just been through the public school system. I've had the fortune of working in public and private institutions. The two, I think, have given me some unique perspective on the differences, similarities, and probably best practices from sort of both. And over time, I have also developed a skill set in business assurance, bank supervision, financial reporting, and now financial intelligence. An integration of all these, I think, have given me a unique perspective to put me where I am today. In summary, that's Clement Kapalu.
There are those that might be interested to know, after having learned all these, impressive skills that you've just mentioned here, where did you do your school,
Interestingly, primary, I never was at a single primary school for over 2 years.
Wow.
Was at Chilenje B here in Lusaka, in Livingstone, Maramba Primary School, Serenje Boma, secondary school. I was in Mumbwa for 5 years at Mumbwa Secondary School.
Okay. At least I know a couple of people that were at Mumbwa Secondary School. I've got a friend of mine who's in Finland currently.
Okay.
So he'll be very glad to watch this particular episode because there's somebody from Mumbwa High. Innocent, here's your man here. Okay, so what are some of your hobbies, outside this important and great work that you do?
Thank you. In the main, reading financial literature. I also play some golf. Outside that, not a lot.
Interesting. Okay. So I don't know a lot about golf, but I've got a lot of friends who play golf.
Yes.
Sometimes I hear, is it 18 holes?
Yes.
I don't know whether it's 21 or 16.
Handicaps.
Yeah, I play basketball, so I know a lot about basketball. But do you play? Is it the 18 handicaps or?
Well, my skills are not the best. I am a 21 handicap. Yes, like Lusaka Golf Club, 18 holes, and normally that would be good enough.
Okay.
Sure.
Interesting. Here is Mr. Kapalu being modest. If he can do 21, I don't know if I can even do 8. But anyway, let's get into the meat of our conversation. Obviously, that is, looking broadly at what, the FIC does. Maybe before we get into the meat of our conversation, just give us a picture of what the year is looking like with regards, the suspicious, the SRTs.
Thank you. A lot of work has gone in 2024. I'm sure the complete report card will come through our annual trends report. But what we're seeing over the last 12 months doesn't look too good, particularly in the area of illicit financial flows. We have had almost 700 reports related, involving over 1,000 subjects and about $3 billion worth of illicit financial flows. That's quite huge for our size of the economy, and I think there is need to continue to put measures through to mitigate some of these challenges. Happy to see that some of the recommendations made, government has acted upon them, and we wait to see what effect they'll have in the real world.
Interesting, and of course, more comforting to hear that there's actually appropriate action being taken. But like you mentioned earlier on, the report for this particular fiscal year will be released soon. But let's delve back into the report that we're currently, looking at. If you look therein, there's an increase in terms of the STRs, in 2023 compared to 2022. There's a 78.97% increase, from 10,293 to about 5,745.
Sure.
So, should people be worried when they hear statistics such as this?
Thank you. So it's twofold. In one sense, when you see the numbers increasing, that's positive because the FIC has two components. One, that of detection of financial crimes. The other one is prevention. On the prevention side, there's education to reporting entities who file STRs. If we see more, that to us suggests there is better understanding by reporting entities and hence filing more reports for the center to work with. That's the positive side. On the negative side, it could be that they are seeing more of financial vice that's happening and hence reporting it to the center. But specifically relating to your question on this increase over the period, yes, part of it is more reporting entities coming to the party. Part of it, though, has been related to some financial institutions having had challenges and therefore a backlog in reporting, and that mainly explains the gap that you have referred to. That backlog is now reported. We are hoping to see the situation normalize going forward.
You spoke about government beginning to do or take appropriate action to be able to make sure that what is reported is followed through. What are some of the legal reforms? I know at some point in time, this was a huge debate with regards to the Financial Intelligence Center. What are some of the legal reforms would you like to see to put the FIC in a position where it would be better and more efficient and more effective than this to get the results that we all desire? Not that it's not doing anything. Obviously, there's significant progresses, as we've heard already.
Thank you. In the main, the structuring or the financial makeup and the legal makeup of a financial intelligence unit, it's governed by Recommendation 29 of the Financial Action Task Force. So you are given what it should look like. And in the main, we have had an evaluation by the Eastern and Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group a few years back. Mainly, our center largely complies with international standards. There's obviously room to improve certain aspects, but mainly, I think without boasting, we may be one of your bright spots in terms of FIUs in our region. We are doing the right things according to the standards as prescribed. That said, we are undergoing a review of our law, in part to catch up with changes that have gone on with the standards. In part, it's also to try and strengthen the financial penalties for entities that do not comply. So going forward, you might see the stiffening of penalties, particularly for reporting entities that do not comply with the Financial Intelligence Center Act. We are hoping that should help increase the level of compliance, as the penalties will be more dissuasive. Thank you.
When we talk about collaboration with, or maybe before I get to collaboration, you mentioned something of keen interest to me, the issue of updating. The world is changing, the perpetrators of money laundering and, all these suspicious transactions obviously are evolving.
Yes.
And technology is coming in handy to be able to enable them do their unscrupulous work in
Correct.
this space.
Yes.
Is the FIC updated technology wise to be able to ensure that it is in a position where it can catch these guys in their craft?
Thank you. In the main, I think government has been supportive to the center. We have the systems. At the moment, the crime trend is mainly going towards cryptocurrencies, blockchain, and the center has been equipped in that sense to be able to detect. But the other side to it, rather than technology, it's the legal infrastructure, which I think has lagged a little behind. I am aware that the central bank is leading the effort to update the country's laws around virtual asset service providers, and that will be resolved. But at the moment, we do have a framework with which virtual asset service providers can register and report suspicious transaction reports. And I'm sure in the next typology report, you will see a lot of cases that are related to cryptocurrencies.
Okay. When we talk about obviously the gap between the value of the reports that are received and what is obviously recovered, this is something that normally, sparks debate.
Yes.
From a lot of people. So we would like to know what can be done to close the gap, say, between the reports received in 2023 and the value of recoveries, of which, from the reports from ZRA, we know that it was somewhere around 3.5 billion, which is lesser than the value of reports that was received.
Thank you. It's a good question, and part of it will be resolved and answered for the public by a performance audit that's currently going on at the center by Office of the Auditor General, which we welcome. It's always useful and helpful to have an external person look at what you're doing, check what bottlenecks are in, and hopefully we'll get recommendations out of that. But I would like to mention that the center is only but one of a cog in a value chain whose role is to detect these financial crimes, and particularly money laundering, recommend them to law enforcement, and law enforcement role is to investigate and hopefully send for prosecution any erring individuals. But I would like to
I like that part. I don't mean to cut you short, but I like that.
Please
part
go
because,
ahead.
You see, a lot of times I hear people blaming the Financial Intelligence Center. They're not doing this, they're not doing that. But can you just repeat that for the sake of our listeners? When you talk about the role of FIC, I like the way you put it.
Sure. So, apart from preventative measures, the role of the center is to detect financial crimes and send the same, when detected, to law enforcement to investigate where they find cases that are viable. They then send them for prosecution to Director of Public Prosecutions. That is the role of the center. So yes, sometimes we're asked what we're doing about it. We're doing everything because our role is to detect and disseminate to law enforcement. Now, Sometimes there's always this issue whether or not law enforcement is doing enough. It can be answered in different ways. I have given you this example that this year alone, around the matter of illicit financial flows, we probably have taken out 700 reports. Even with the best efforts for law enforcement, we may not get the outcome that we desire because of the magnitude of the problem. So what am I talking about? We need to step back a little and ask ourselves, is the matter of crime and punishment the only thing that we need to do to strengthen our system? My answer is no. If we step back a little, Zambia became a liberal economy in the 1990s. And with that liberalization came certain risks to our economy. Have we, over time, managed those risks properly in terms of controls that we have in our public institutions, in our private institutions, to actually ensure that this liberal economy does deliver for the people? My answer is probably not. There is a little more that we have to do to enhance our system for purposes of prevention and not actually let crimes occur and then say, hey, let's send them to law enforcement. That is expensive. Justice is delayed. Courts are clogged. And we give law enforcement too much work that way. In terms of institutions like yours, that would probably be involved with advocacy. I would like to see a little more around this issue of enhancing systems, particularly in the public service, to ensure that they are fit for purpose. That, I think, we still have a challenge with. Another, this time a personal view, I would like to think there's a little more we can do around remuneration to make it fit for purpose. Here, I'm not talking of quantum, I'm talking of structuring of the remuneration to ensure that it helps push efficiency and productivity in the public sector. To be specific, I'm a strong advocate of variable pay. It's one very quick way in which to increase productivity. Another aspect that I think would help, especially with prevention, is to have government systems speak to each other. We sit on a lot of data that, if analyzed properly, we don't need to wait for Office of the Auditor General. We don't need to wait for the FIC to actually take corrective action. Much better, we need these disparate systems or data sets in different institutions to speak to each other, and we will be able to see a lot more and put in a lot more controls of a preventative nature that will be far much more helpful than detection and the expectation then that law enforcement will arrest culprits. By the time you do that, value would have been lost, time would have been lost, the resources, most of the time, by their nature, these flows go out of the country. And it's not easy to get them back. And therefore, for advocacy, we would like to see more focus on prevention rather than detection and punishment.
Interesting submission there from Mr. Clement Kapalu, all the way from the Financial Intelligence Center. And of course, we are looking at the role that the FIC plays in the broader Zambian economy, especially when it comes to prudent fiscal management, which is very key to achieving fiscal stability, as we all understand is the primary goal that can change the outlook of the Zambian economy. For now, we'll take a break. We'll be back shortly.
urge all stakeholders to support and actively participate in this campaign.
What are you doing to make sure we get this money back? Because once that money goes to your countries, you treat it as a clean money, you know?
We lack a comprehensive national beneficial ownership register.
So all these, the financial, the illicit flows that are being recorded, what are the young people doing about this?
Welcome back to the People Space. And of course, today I'm fortunate and privileged to be hosting the Director General from the Financial Intelligence Center, Mr. Clement Kapalu. And of course, we have been looking at some of the trends within the Zambian financial space, particularly enshrined in the reports that come from the FIC, and just examining and interrogating aspects that could be explored to ensure that these are not just mere reports, and also getting to know what actions are taken, at the same time understanding the role of the center itself in all this. Now, Mr. Kapalu, when we began, obviously, we learned a few things about you. You play golf, you like reading, financial intelligence stuff, and one of the things that perhaps we did not look at is, there are people that may be watching and wondering to say, okay, besides the reading and the golfing, are you married? Do you have kids? Do you spend time with family and things like that?
Yes, I am married. I have 4 children. In my spare time, I also do a little bit of farming. Luvale by tribe, so you'd expect I also love to dance. Over Christmas, we've
Ngachiri mwane.
Yeah, tubanu moto. Ngachiri eno. Mwane. So yes,
my mother was Luvale, so I just know that.
I see. So we've arranged a dance at the farm, makishi, and that's. I'm a traditional man as well. So,
interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. I think one of these days we'll meet at Telekumbili Amizi, because that's on my list. I want to attend the full ceremony.
That would be great.
Okay, so picking off from where we left from, another interesting thing that I noted when I was looking at the 2023 trends report is that, the banks recorded an increase in STRs, compared to interesting entities. I'm using the word interesting because there's been a lot of debate surrounding the law firms.
Yes.
These have often been used as conduits of some of these money laundering activities. But we're seeing that banks are doing relatively very well compared to law firms and others. Is there anything that the FIC is doing to be able to improve compliance that is generally everywhere and not predominantly restricted to banks?
Excellent question. So the law firms are in a category that we call designated non-bank financial institutions and professionals. Now that would put in the same pot, say, the accountants. So over the first 10 years of the existence of the center, the focus mainly was on education. The law was new, and as much as possible, we're trying to educate the players on the need to comply and the provisions of the law. That, we think, has largely been done. Now, going forward, we are carrying a little bit of the big stick in terms of now doing inspections to ensure that entities are complying. Those that are not complying, we have started imposing fines. These include law firms, they include accountants, and the role of these 2 professions particularly around the anti-money laundering regime is quite big. And therefore, we do pay special attention. We collaborate quite well with the supervisors of these two professions in terms of the Law Association of Zambia and the Chartered Institute of Accountants, of which I'm a member. And I think there's movement in terms of awareness and now movement in terms of enforcement, because inspections are going on now. For non-compliance, we are ensuring that appropriate sanctions are meted out, and we are hoping with time compliance will improve, and from these sectors and others, we will begin to see a lot more of the reports that you refer to.
Another interesting thing is when you look at the Zambian economy itself, especially with regards, the accountants and the law firms, but mainly on the accountant side. I've met a few colleagues that work for, I won't say specifically which, racial grouping, but in my experience, I've noticed that here's an accountant who is working with these people, and they so much allow, the use of, I think I would use the word indiscriminate use of cash. And one of the things that, I know the FIC is advocating for is for us to move to a cashless economy. But here you have these professionals that are comfortable, that succumb to instructions from some of these people that they work for and with, in promoting indiscriminate use of cash. What would you love to see with regards regulation when it comes to usage of cash? And how would it help to reduce some of these SDRs that we see year in, year out?
Excellent question, that is. First, in terms of what I would like to see with the accounting profession, before we talk about the use of cash. Around the issue of financial reporting, I think there is scope to improve. There is a little more reform that we need to do in that space. Around the issue of supervision for anti-money laundering in the profession, there is scope, again, for improvement. So that's a conversation that I think we'll continue to have with the Institute to ensure that our profession is actually not used or abused for purposes of money laundering. But with regard to the matter on the use of cash, I'm happy to say that the Anti-Money Laundering Authority, which is headed by the Attorney General, of which I am a member, put up a study that was undertaken by ZIPA to look or inquire into the use of cash in commerce and how that can be regulated. As that study has been done, the paper is with the Anti-Money Laundering Authority, and I think it's receiving favorable attention. My hope is that that could go into policy and hopefully later some regulation around limiting the use of cash in some transactions in the economy. That will go a long way to try and deal with the problem you've referred to.
I remember I was once part of a meeting where one of your predecessors, I won't mention who,
yes,
but they were sternly attacked by some individuals,
yes,
who just rose up in the audience and
yes,
said, the FIC is useless. The FIC does nothing apart from just giving us numbers.
yes.
And they used a very funny term which became popular, and I remember it was a headline somewhere where it said, the FIC is a toothless dog. So based on that,
yes,
when you look at the 2023 trends report, about 102 cases were reported,
yes,
and only 1% resulted in conviction, and 1 in an acquittal, and 3 in a nolle prosequi.
yes.
How do you feel about this?
Right. I think the first place is we need to step back a bit again and talk about what the role of the center is. It's not our role to arrest. It's not our role to investigate. Like earlier indicated, our role is detection and presentation of the same to law enforcement. Now, to their credit, law enforcement has done a lot. I'll give you an example. For purposes of our law, the Zambia Revenue Authorities classified as law enforcement. Over the past 1 year, we have disseminated reports now worth about $3 billion associated with illicit financial flows. They have, for the first 9 months, in fact, done assessments on these individuals worth $540 million. That's not talked about as much as the aspect of who is arrested. But let me also come back to the issue of the statistics you've referred to in terms of arresting. Between the time a financial crime is detected, analyzed, and disseminated to law enforcement, and you seeing someone going to jail, sometimes that's taking as much as 5 years. So the cases that you are seeing disposed now, they aren't new. So there are issues around cutoff. So if you see a guy, there's an asset forfeiture, there's a conviction, that has not happened now. It could be a case that was disseminated to law enforcement 5 years ago. But the process is long between detection, investigation, prosecution, and adjudication in court before you actually see individuals go to jail. Takes me back, though, to my initial view that that should only be one among many items in our toolkit. By the time we are taking someone to jail, a lot is lost already and may never be recovered. Hence, my emphasis that we need to have systems that are fit for purpose, that are much more focused on prevention. No matter how much we whip law enforcement, they may never be in a position to, in fact, deal with all these issues. I've given you an example this year. We've done 700. Which court is going to adjudicate on all these issues in 1 year? It won't happen. And therefore, we need to have a focus much more on prevention, on bettering our systems. That way, it's cheaper and it's actually more effective. Once resources go, especially to the countries that we know go, the international cooperation framework sometimes does not work as well as we like to see it work. And therefore, for advocacy, again, crime and punishment is one aspect. Improvement of controls is another aspect. How we improve the quality of our public service is another aspect. We need to put all these issues together for us, hopefully, at some point, to see some improvement. But what I should be hearing from you is questions around what systems are allowing for $3 billion worth of outflows in our country. That's what we need to be checking. That's where the issues are. That's where value will be gotten rather than the punishment aspect. We will punish, but next year, probably another $3 billion will go because we have not fixed the systems. And therefore, especially for civil society, I would like to see much more focus, much more emphasis on interrogation of systems. If I say 3 billion has gone out, I want to hear questions. How? What happened? Who sent it out? How did it go out? And then we focus on closing those loopholes. For the guys going to prison, they will continue. But sometimes it doesn't happen as fast because, again, there is due process that has to take place, and therefore it will not happen always as quickly as the public would like to see it.
Okay. You talked about the role being to obviously detect and report. Is it true, that when you compile some of these reports, you first have to submit it to the president, who look at it like, okay, when son is on the list, there's my niece there. Oh, no, my wife is here. Hey, Mr. Clement, can you make sure that this report is edited again? I've sent it back. Is it true?
So I hardly meet the president. He has never called me. We don't talk. I do my job as freely as I possibly can. The reports that we send to law enforcement have absolutely the president doesn't know. He probably will know when law enforcement is making an announcement for an arrest, for an interrogation. Between this office and that of the president, no, we get absolutely no interference. The report that the president looks at is the same report that the public looks at, that's published once a year. The intelligence reports that go to law enforcement is just between the center and law enforcement. That's the position.
Interesting there. And I think it answers the question that a lot of people, would have, especially on the politically exposed individuals,
Sure.
whom many think are shielded by the powers that be, but thank God that has been clarified. But as we get to close our conversation, Mr. Kapalu, one of the things that remains of great concern, and I think in your earlier statement, you alluded to this, is the issue of public sector corruption and money laundering. It continues to be a problem. And obviously, you've given wisdom to what, strategic entities like CSOs can do to be able to contribute their part towards this particular fight. But we would like you to just again weigh in on this. How can this be prevented?
Thank you. A big factor around public sector corruption is human beings. There are some soft but hard issues, in a way, in dealing with this particular issue. We can't just legislate our way out of the problem. We can't just arrest our way out of the problem. The bigger issue is culture. How do we get to a place where a lot of the individuals that have been entrusted with public responsibilities have that duty of care to ensure that authority is not abused? That's a much more difficult issue than the aspect of detecting and arresting. Do we have specific, particular programs around culture change, apart from the specific issue of letting a crime happen? It's obviously detected, investigated, and individuals getting prosecuted. I've given you an indication, sometimes that will take 5 years. A lot would have gone wrong. And therefore, we, I think, need to try and look amongst ourselves to find good people to run state institutions. When you have good persons running state institutions, they'll follow the rule book. If you have bad people run state institutions, they will not follow the rule book. No matter how good the systems are, there will be system override. And in the end, bad things happen. And therefore, it is my view that we need to seriously also think through the soft issues. How do we effect culture change to ensure that at least most individuals in the public service abhor corruption, apart from just putting all that responsibility on the Anti-Corruption Commission? They're doing their best, but we will still have a problem where there is a general acceptance of corruption as a way of life. So those interventions, I think, are necessary. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was Mr. Kapalu joining me, obviously, on the People's Podcast and, of course, the People's Space Podcast. And, of course, we were looking at the role of the Financial Intelligence Center and, of course, having an insight into what the suspicious transaction reports for the year 2024 are looking like, but at the same time, just getting to understand more what it is that the FIC is doing to be able to prevent most of these financial crimes. And what is very comforting, which is emanating from this conversation, is that the FIC does not just sit around and report the crimes, but of course works strategically with institutions to make sure that we don't get to a place where we report the crimes after they occur, but develop mechanisms and tactics to prevent the crimes from happening. And I think that is the key message that has come from Mr. Kapalu. And of course, whatever goes up, they say, must come down. And this marks the end of today's episode. And thank you for joining me. The name is Wenson Mafor. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel that does broadcast most of these episodes on a Thursday. And also remember to like the Facebook page of the Center for Trade Policy and Development, where we also air these episodes. Let us know your feedback and we will definitely listen.